What's up, guys? It's Steve with Unpolished, and we just filmed an episode with someone who reached out of the blue. They wanted to share their story about how they went from far left liberal Democrat to now not necessarily far right, but they now identify with the right side of things, even became a Christian in the process. And I think this is a story a lot of people will be able to relate to. I think it's a story that a lot of people need to hear. So if you ever wanted to hear how a liberal can possibly, or far left Democrat can possibly become a conservative, this is the podcast to tune into. Welcome back to the UP, everybody. Today is a really unique show. So we actually had someone, Nicole, reach out. It is Nicole, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I have no idea who this person is. So it's a really unique episode because she reached out to us listening to a couple episodes, and we had mentioned not necessarily Trump derangement syndrome or anything specific, but you can tell the vibe and what we're pushing for and advocating for and supporting by listening to some of our episodes. And she wanted to share her story because, like you were saying before we hit record, you've essentially done a 180.
Yep.
So, first of all, how'd you hear about the show?
Well, I heard about you through my sister because I think when we were planning on moving back from Tennessee to Illinois, I was worried.
Also, why did you do that?
I know. Everyone asked that.
Oh, my God. What are you doing?
We lived in East Tennessee. It was an absolute dream outside of the Smokies for 4 years. It was every bit as amazing as you would imagine it to be. But I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and I love my family, my siblings, and it just came down to, are we always going to be a plane right away? It was a hard decision. It involved a year of me going to therapy because I felt like I was really torn between setting my kids up in a beautiful state that was pretty free versus coming back into Illinois, which I knew was different. But at the end of the day, my family, I just life is short. I want to be by my family.
I get it.
So we did that. But so my sister, when we were moving back, I was a little still worried about how the state of affairs were in Illinois in terms of education and everything coming off the heels of COVID. And I think my sister had mentioned that there's somebody that's trying to do maybe a homeschool group. I don't even know if you were. Somehow she gave me your contact on Facebook, and I started following you, and then that's how I found out. So kind of random.
Oh, so you saw the show through Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is no structure. This is no nothing. This is I'm literally getting to know you as this. This is I've been excited to do this show all day, and it helps that I can tell you like to talk because me and Alex are worried about that. We literally have no idea who this girl is. She wanted to come on the show. So, what episodes have you listened to, and what did you hear in the show that made you want to reach out?
Well, I definitely knew there was a little bit more of a conservative slant, and based on your viewpoints during COVID, which of course is that's been a huge life changer for me. I think COVID was probably one of the most significant red pill thing for me. And so I knew that was a slant. I just always felt like I have a very unique perspective because I was a far left Democrat for most of my life as you could possibly imagine. And I really got essentially red pilled during COVID.
I think that's happened with a pretty good amount of people. Not, I don't know if I would say a lot.
A lot,
because people are so stuck in their moral superiority that was created during COVID.
Yes.
They're so stuck in it, and they're so ignorant because of it.
Yeah.
So what were you like when you say far left Democrat? Because I do feel like the definitions vary between people.
True.
So when you say I'm as far left as you could have been, what exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, and I think that's I would like to start there and explain because I feel like that is an important piece of the picture. So, I just was the thing is when I was pretty left and Democrat, politics weren't as much a thing. I could tell you right now, going to the high school that I went to Lake Zurich High School. Okay. We never talked about race. We didn't talk about politics because we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have social media, and we were just kids, and it was great. It was a great experience. I ended up going to U of I for college in Champaign.
How old are you, by the way?
43.
Oh wow, you
Yeah.
look great for 43. I didn't see that coming at all. I was thinking like 35, 36. You
Oh,
look
I love
great.
you already. Okay. No, but yeah, so I went to U of I in Champaign, and I did the whole Big Ten, I was in a sorority, just had so much fun. But, only there was a dabbling for me of, it was a very, at the time, pro-chief or anti-chief for the mascot at U of I, Chief Illiniwek, so Native American symbol. That was my first exposure to like something kind of political. And what was so interesting is at the time I was kind of, this is gonna sound so weird, right? But like, it was a big deal on campus. And I remember at the time I was kind of like, well, maybe we should hear what the Native Americans have to say. It was kind of like piqued my curiosity. What's funny is at the time, out of my sorority, I was the only one that I felt like was a little bit sympathetic, maybe, to like wanting to hear the Native American side. So it's like my start towards being a little bit more, I guess, liberalish, where all of my sorority sisters were very much pro-chief. They're like, it's stupid, da 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 da, which I think is ironic because we've done a complete 180. Where now I'm kind of like, all right, the racial tropes and things like we need to but now they're very much so PC. So it's just fascinating to see how things have kind of like shifted. But at the time, so hold
on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in your sorority, you were pro switch?
I was pro hearing out the Native Americans. I was sensitive, and I still.
And what were they saying?
They were saying that the mascot was, how like all the sports mascots have changed because of political correctness. And at the time, I was kind of like, there is a bunch of like frat boys that are just dressing up like an Indian and dancing on the field. Like, I think I was kind of sympathetic, at the time too. And I'm not saying that I'm not now, but I see it differently now. But at the time, I was kind of like, oh, bleeding heart. That's where my bleeding heart liberal. I was like, well, I feel bad for their feelings, So, but I remember feeling very alone in that opinion at the time.
So you felt as though it was offensive to Indians?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
How?
I did. I know, right?
But like seriously, like how did you think that?
The way that I like rationalized it was because I do think I was like, if they were having a Native American individual do the dance, because I think what they were saying was that the dance was kind of like a religious dance, and they felt like it was kind of like sacrilegious or disrespectful because it would just be, like I said, a frat boy.
And now this, so that this came from Native Americans, or did this come from just hearsay? Oh, this is what the Native Americans are saying.
Yeah, I do think they had some Native Americans on campus like saying that they didn't feel comfortable with it. I don't really remember because now it's been like 20 years ago.
Right.
But I did feel a little bit, I was like, well, maybe they have a point is kind of where, I know you're kind of like,
and I'm just digging at it because I really want to understand, because when I see something like that, I see representation.
True.
So I see like a remembrance.
That's true.
I see hey, and it's also like a unity thing. Like, okay, maybe I'm not Native American, but I can respect and bring the culture to the field by doing this dance, and I can represent how our school got this mascot. Yeah. And how, that's what I see.
No, that's a valid point. That's a valid point.
That's what I've always seen.
And it could have been the inklings of somebody, maybe a small group saying that they didn't like it. And then again, me starting to kind of pulling at your heartstrings a little bit, where I'm not really scanning out and being like, because you're right, there is that representation piece as opposed to, it was just kind of like the beginning of the wheels turning for me, I guess, is all I can say. And I'm not totally sure my opinion on it now, but I see things a little differently.
Right. Okay. So you're saying this was like the first time that you really remember having like some sort of political interference.
Yeah. It wasn't until I was in college. I think for me, the biggest takeaway on that was the fact that I realized I could stand alone from my friends. Even though now I don't necessarily know that I agree with my opinion, I was proud of myself for still speaking my truth in a way where I felt like all of my friends thought I was, stupid or crazy, or I wasn't going along with the group. I will say that. And I liked that about myself at the time, whether or not I know if my opinion was true or not, or, misunderstood. I don't know. I'm not sure that I agree with that, but I know that I wasn't afraid to keep my mouth shut on my opinion, I guess, even though it was going upstream.
Which
and it
was
was uncomfortable.
Probably why you've done this 180.
Yeah.
Because that is a quality that I think is very hard to find.
Yeah.
And this groupthink is extremely powerful.
Yes.
And you see it, and I've seen it in so many different ways with COVID, with politics, with all of that crap. And I think it's a big reason why I truly believe a lot of the views that we talk about on the show are the majority. And I think most Democrats,
yes.
let's just use an example. I
Yes.
think most Democrats don't think a man can be a woman and a
Yeah.
woman can be a man.
Yeah.
I think most Democrats think that way.
Mm-hmm.
But will they say it
Yeah.
and go against
Yeah.
the water, go
Yeah.
against the current? No, they
No.
won't.
Yeah.
And I think that quality that you are describing right now, where you're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to share it, I'm going to say it, I think it's why you did your switch.
100%. It is. And it's the thing I'm probably the most proud of about myself. Like, love it or hate it, it has brought me stress. It has lost me friends. It has brought me trauma.
Tons
but
of
I'm
friends.
I'm always committed to my truth and to the truth, or to speaking my mind, or to asking questions. At the end of the day, I will never shut my mouth just for the good of like not just making waves. I will always ask the questions. And so sometimes I think in the past I may not have always gotten it right, but that is a quality I like about myself. And that is why I think I've done a 180 and why I've been able to, like, I don't know. It's made a lot of waves, but it is who I am. It's just like, I'm going to go with it. But so then after U of I went there to be a teacher. And this is also interesting. I really always want to be a social worker, but I knew you needed to get your master's in social work. And I'm one of 5 kids. My dad was a mailman. And I was like, I just need to make money, like, right away. So I was like, I'm just going to be a Chicago public school teacher, because I'm like, that'll be kind of like being a social worker, because I'll be like helping the needy. Like, this is always where my heart was. I want to like get in there. So I did. I only applied to the inner city. I only applied to Chicago Public. And I remember I got my first job in a small neighborhood school on the west side of Chicago, teaching all Black kids. It was a high school. And I'll never forget my first day. I was so excited, but then I just remember being so nervous, standing there like 22, and just like all these like 16-year-old, inner city kids come flooding in. I was just like, oh shit. What
did I do?
But it was a very
little bit of a culture shock.
Eye-opening, but awesome experience. I loved those kids, but it was as rough as you can possibly imagine. Like, it was like kids, I would have students coming in with just wads of cash, like the boys. And I'm like, where'd you get that? I was so naive, and they'd be like, oh, they're like, Miss Rafalowitz, that was my maiden name, selling drugs, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't have been as naive as you. But it was like, I also feel like I bonded with the kids, and I genuinely love them. And I saw that there was disparities, so this is where I start to get a little bit more like, in some ways, like, now I think the solution is different than what I used to think it is, because I think even now there are disparities, with these inner city Black kids in Chicago versus the suburban, like what they have access to. I just have a different solution now in my perspective than I think I did then. And I think at the time I thought it was institutional racism. It's like institutional racism. And now I definitely don't see it that way. But
I think what the left likes to say is systemic racism.
Yeah, okay, that's it.
And institutional as well. That's thrown out there. But I think systemic is like the main one, where it's like the whole system is rigged against the Blacks.
Yes. And I totally believe that, because on some level I was witnessing it, to be honest. But why?
On the level you were witnessing it.
Yes.
Like, you were at
I was at the
ground level zero.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would be telling my family. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. I mean, I had so many of these teenage girls that were pregnant. The girls would come into my classroom during lunch, and we would be eating lunch, and they would tell me about like incest being common. And like, I'll never forget, one of them told me why some of these girls get pregnant so quick was because if an uncle or somebody had like assaulted them, that they want to quickly go and sleep with somebody so that if they get pregnant, that it's not like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh my God.
The shit that I have heard from these kids, the stuff that I had to see. There was times, and I was like young and very green, but I would pick them up. Like, I would take some of the girls once. I took them and they came back to my apartment. I was like, let's make cookies. And then I had to drop them off at their house at night on the west side of Chicago. And I remember being so anxious. The streets were crowded with people just like selling drugs. And I was like, I like did a loop like 4 times around this one girl's block. I'm like, I can't drop you off. There's all these like creepy people here. But it was like, I was getting this like weird taste of like, it is as bad as anyone can imagine. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was my Chicago public experience. And in some ways it reaffirmed this vision in my head of these disparities and like, racism, right? Like, was the only reason I could think in my head of why is there such disparity for these kids. Again, I have a different solution at this point. I'm sure,
And
over
yeah,
time,
and I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Yes.
So after the public school teaching, what happened?
So then
Where'd you go?
after that, I then actually moved to LA and I taught in East LA for 2
So
years.
you're just liberal city to liberal city.
I know. And when I taught in East LA, it was fascinating because I taught in a 100% Latino school, public school, in kind of also a low income area that was rough, but different in a way that I found so interesting. These kids were poor, they were low income, and they were definitely into rough stuff. But one huge difference I noticed was they had families. They had families and they didn't need me the way that my Chicago kids needed me. And it was like hard for me to explain, but there was a desperation with my Chicago students that wasn't there with the Latino students. Even though they were both poor, even though they were both minorities, I was like, it's so fascinating because these Latino students had parents and they had families. And so that was also like an interesting observation I made, but also a great experience. But it was at that point after those 2 years in LA that I was like, no, I really do just want to be a social worker. Like, I really just want to like help these people. Like, my favorite about teaching was like connecting with the kids and like talking about life. And it wasn't really teaching them English, which I also noticed they weren't even available to learn because they had so much other shit going on that they weren't like caring about like Edgar Allan Poe, And I was like, okay, this is stupid. We need to help them. So then I decided, so I went back and got my master's degree and I ended up graduating at UIC, Jane Addams, and that's where I would say my master's degree at Jane Addams in particular is where I think the most heavy dose of propaganda and like just me being entrenched in an ideology was solidified. Like following everything.
So to go back a little bit, you noticed that the nuclear family in the city was just not there.
No, not at all. Yeah, no one had a father. No one had. I would even try if I would try to discipline the students in Chicago. Like I'd be like, I'm going to call your parent. Like none of their parents cared, and I know that they were fighting their own battles of survival in some ways. But there was no parent that I can even call. Like they didn't care if their kid wasn't paying attention. So it was just like you're left in the wild in this classroom with these kids that have no accountability, no parents, and no reason to attempt to do well in school. There was a couple kids, I will say, and I will give them so much credit.
What percentage? 5?
Yeah, like 5. And bless their hearts, they clawed their way through. And I will tell you, I'm still Facebook friends with some of them. Once I stopped being their teacher, we're like friends and they're doing really well. And I'm so happy for them. And I've talked to them on the phone since then.
So now are you friends with any of the other ones?
No.
The ones that,
No. Because there wasn't like a desperation in our relationship. I was teacher, they were students. With the Chicago kids, because there wasn't a parent figure, I feel like I was more. It's hard to like really explain, but it was like there was a desperation for connection with the Chicago students more than the East LA students, is what I felt. I don't
Interesting.
know. Yeah.
Desperation for connection more in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it sounds like it could be because they didn't really have a connection with the parent.
No. Yeah.
Very disconnected in that fact. And man, I mean, anecdotally, personally, I need my mom. I need my dad. I mean,
know.
I needed those people. And
Yeah.
there's no way I would be here with Alex creating a podcast if I didn't have my mom and dad.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you go Chicago, you go to LA, you find the Latinos there.
They were adorable, great, very, sweet. Still had their, kind of gang affiliations here and there. But definitely they had nuclear families and it showed because
that's definitely a Hispanic thing.
Yeah,
that's definitely a Hispanic thing.
And it's so, and I love that about that culture. Very family oriented, and it showed in like, because I can't say socioeconomically, they may have been slightly better off than, the Chicago kids, but probably not much. Probably still pretty poor and low income, but.
Okay, so, and during this LA phase, where are we at on the political spectrum? We still
super liberal.
Still super liberal.
Still super liberal.
And then you decide to go get your master's. You're like, I want to do social work.
Yes.
And it's even ingrained more.
Yes. So at that point, I remember that was really where I remember getting all just books upon books upon books about oppression of Black people, there was a book called like, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together at the Lunch Table? I'm not kidding. That was the title. And like, you'd read it and we would just talk about like, it was all one-sided and I didn't know that at the time. I thought I'm getting books and this is just truth. Now I can look back and say, oh, they were giving me like one perspective, only because on my own, I have since found books that show the other perspective. And now I look back and I'm like, why couldn't they have given us multiple perspectives? But yeah, so it was just book after book after book. I mean, when you're getting your master's in social work, you're just reading about theory, ideologies and oppression and, white people are the oppressors. And so I was buying everything hook, line, and sinker. And I will say too, at that time, my family was quite liberal, like my whole family. I mean, my dad is a mailman. He was in the union, which I think is a liberalish thing. I don't.
So, because I do think the definition of a liberal has changed.
Yeah.
So when you say my family's liberal, can you kind of describe
Well,
that?
I would say like they were definitely always voted Democrat. And my mom, I think I got some of my altruistic tendencies because she would always want to, donate to foster kids, give money to the poor, like that, which is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was so much in me about helping the underprivileged. And then, so just, you're right. Cause at the time it wasn't we were talking about the transgender stuff wasn't even a part of the conversation at that time. So it's what made us liberal? I would say definitely this need to help underprivileged class. And then I don't even know if I could say my family was pro-choice or not. I mean, probably we all were at that time. I think so. And so some of the basic ones, but maybe not I don't know. Yeah.
So have you switched with pro-choice?
Yeah. I have. And I'll tell you that too.
So you were pro-choice and now you're pro-life?
Yeah. So that was a progression as well. So there's definitely, yes. So, if you want me to.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So that was, with the pro-choice thing, I mean, I was 100%. Yeah, I was pro-choice. I was always on the birth control pill. And then I was I think I've been reflecting a lot on why I was too. Of course, I would see my students in Chicago and I was like, well, these kids are having kids and they can't even rate, so all the same things. They can't take care of their kids. These kids are just going to be in poverty. But and I think I even did a women's march in Chicago and I have a picture of myself as my husband, my little daughter and I doing a women's march, all the things. The reason why
you have a picture with your husband doing the march.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
with our baby. And that's
have you guys done a flip together then?
Yes.
Because that would be tough.
Such a blessing. I think about that a lot in our marriage. Because when we first got together, we didn't talk about politics a lot. I knew I was liberal, but it wasn't a thing. Thank God we have both completely gone together in sync, which has been great. But I think the main pro-life thing, I'll tell you, all right, let me just segue into this because I do think it's important. I did believe it was just a little clump of cells, just get rid of it. You just get, rid of it quick. And then I was like, it's fine. But then when I moved to Tennessee, because you're in the Bible Belt, a lot of my friends there that I started making were Christian women. And they were also fun as hell and awesome and genuinely Christian. And I think as a liberal, I really felt like people on the right I knew this. They wanted to get rid of the option to have abortion because they want to control women's bodies. That is what I believed. But then here I'm in Tennessee.
Why'd you believe that? Because of things that
probably because of
the
what
side was spewing?
Said. Yeah. Probably because of what they were saying. It's controlling women's bodies. Because I was they don't actually care about the babies after they're born. And again, I don't know where I'm coming up with this rhetoric, but I was they're not doing anything to help the babies. They just don't want you to have an abortion, but then they want to wipe their hands of it. But then it's when I was
I've never seen that way.
I know. But that's what I thought. And then when I was in Tennessee and all my friends that were Christian and they were pro-life, but I was but they really just believed that baby's life mattered. And none of them were pro-life because they wanted to control women's bodies. It was just that I happened to accidentally become friends with women that were Christian. And I was like, oh, they actually just really like babies. They actually just think the baby deserves a chance to live. And then the other side that I saw was that absolutely Christians do a lot to help young teen moms and babies. And I didn't think that they did. But once I started to I kind of became a Christian a little bit in Tennessee, but more in Illinois when we moved back. I started to realize, so again, it's very much a mismatch of what you're projecting as a Democrat, of what you think the other side believes. And then once I was kind of amongst the other side, I was like, oh,
they're good people.
This isn't what they believe actually at all, and they're good people. And so that was kind of the whole thing. It was this weird mismatch of Republicans are racist. They only care about money. And they want to control women's bodies and don't care about babies. Where I got those ideas, I can't really tell you.
I was going to say, where did you... obviously, you consider yourself sort of indoctrinated by the schools.
Yes.
Where else did you get your news? Did you watch TV?
Probably mainstream media. I definitely watched mainstream media for a period. I was like, isn't anyone just like watching CNN? You guys don't see like, all this racism happening? Like, I think I was just kind of like watching like the average.
This is so good. I'm so glad you came on this. This is crazy.
Yeah, it is really wild. It's so trippy. And so then, but I knew if you were to ask me like Republican, like the first word, if I had I would be like racist. I don't know why, but that was like, I just knew that. I was like, you're a
because
racist.
you were conditioned that way.
Because I was conditioned that way. And then, so I'm kind of like hopping all over the place. When I lived in Tennessee, I will tell you, God is my witness, I had more healthy, positive, wholesome interactions and friendships with Black people in Tennessee than I ever have in Illinois before or since I've been back here. I had a babysitter on our street, a Black girl, she's a teacher, her mom, they would babysit my kids. I played poker. So I played poker in Tennessee. And I remember during BLM, I ran up to this one guy that was gay and Black. And I was like, what do you think about all this BLM? I thought like I was going to be his ally. And he was like, doesn't affect me. He's like, I'm not oppressed. I was like, what? So it was just like this whole weird, like everything that I thought about the South or about conservatives or Republicans was just not true once I was living there. That's all I can say about that.
So to go back
Yeah.
to the you were pro-choice and you're pro-life.
Yeah.
What sort of was like the defining factor to make you pro-life?
Well, a couple things. I think obviously becoming a Christian and like really realizing that I do think like life has value, whether you're a Christian or not. But that was definitely part of it for me. It was like, it doesn't really seem natural to do. I think once I stopped dehumanizing random clumps of cells and really saw it as like, actually, this would have been your baby. Like, I didn't ever think about that. It sounds so dumb. And I was telling my husband, I was like, that would have been your baby. Like, that's wild that like there was such a disconnect from really thinking about it. And what was the other like thing I think really obviously just thinking, like it's kind of a ridiculous argument to say that just because a baby may have a hard life or even a horrible life, that they don't deserve a chance at a life. I think that's a little ridiculous.
One of the best things I ever heard in that, we'll call it argument or debate, is it's not a potential life, it's a life with potential. And I've always loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can argue both.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I can sit here and say I'm 100% pro-life, because if you're 100% pro-life, that means if some 15-year-old gets raped and gets pregnant, then they are required to have that baby.
Yeah.
And I have a tough time with that idea.
Yeah.
I also have a tough time thinking, okay, let's say the whole nation went pro-life. No more abortions, no nothing. Okay, well now there's not going to be a societal change with the call to pro-life. So now who's going to take care of all the babies that are born?
Yeah.
The taxpayers, the government agencies.
Yeah.
So I kind of ride the middle, but I'm also, talking about what you're talking about. It's not a clump of cells. It is a potential life, and it is a life with potential as well. So like I said, I think logistically, I'm kind of pro-choice.
I actually, and I will clarify, I'm not dissimilar from that. Morally, I'm pro-life now.
Morally 100%,
I'm pro-life.
100%. Like if we were to get pregnant by accident.
I know. And I actually tell my husband that because I am 43 and he won't have a vasectomy, which I respect, and I'm not on the pill. I'm like, that's good. Yeah. And I was like, and now that I'm a Christian, like we having a baby, I'm like, you be careful. But I love like kicking it back to the States. I love putting some parameters on it. That's not the hill I want to die on. Have I become pro-life? Sure. That's not my hill. Like I'm morally and ethically, yes. But in terms of making a law across, no, I don't think I would do that either at this point.
Right.
I don't know.
Maybe the answer is like a special, I don't know, program or whatever you'd call it, some sort group that looks at it case by case, sort of, like
oh yeah. No, I like that idea.
Forcing like a 15-year-old girl that just got raped to have a baby would be pretty psychopath.
That's a valid point. That's a valid perspective.
Like who's going to take care? Like I think you need to look into the income and you need to look into her support system and what is the life going to be like of this baby? And is she mentally there?
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
you just got raped.
No, I
Are you
agree
going to
with
be
you.
okay looking at this baby your
Yeah,
whole life?
No, I know.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if my daughter got raped, I'd be like, that is not the father. You know, like
no, 100%.
You know what I mean? So it's tough to talk about, and I think that's less than 1% of any possibility. It's less than 0.5% probably. Alex is making symbols.
It's a very, very small percent.
It's super small. It's super small. But I think to say you're pro-life 100%, you have to say that daughter or that little girl has to have the kid. And I have trouble doing that. I do think, and I think it's a little hypocritical too. Like we can kind of get into the vaccine too, because I think that's what woke you up a little bit. But Republicans are like, well, it's my body, my choice. But then you look at this situation, it's, well, now it's your body. It's no longer your choice.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the baby's choice. It's like,
you're right. It does actually really connect. One other thing I do kind of want to say, but like while being as vague as possible, but I think also in my line of work, I think there is a huge under discussion of also the effects of having an abortion on a woman. I'm not saying every woman needs to feel regretful or shitty or depressed about it, but I am saying many do, and I've worked with some. And so I think that is
well, you're
also
human. You should.
Yeah. That's a topic that I think is often always swept under the rug. What about the mental health, though, of like these, so it is a complicated topic, but I'm saying I've seen it.
Is there a support system for girls who get abortions?
It's hard to find. Some churches have them, which I love that a church would do that. And there are some churches that
weird. A church is doing it. It's so weird.
Because I've looked into it for some clients that I've had, and
I'm sorry, I totally forgot to brief you as well. What is your line of work?
Okay, yeah. So I did get my master's in social work. I was a school social worker. After being a high school teacher, I was a school social worker for about 5 years. And then I ended up going to private practice. So now I do therapy. I do private practice, all virtual.
And then go back to what you're talking about.
Well, then, so to segue to the whole my body, my choice, since we're on the topic, and I think it's a good segue too. That actually was like kind of the little like needle that burst my bubble during COVID, because I would say the only thing that separated me from my fellow Dems and fellow Libs was vaccines. So I always knew my sister, I don't want to put other people's business out there. Take that back. I always knew I was going to do like a very delayed schedule with my kids. I always was vaccine hesitant. I had done a lot of my own personal research when having children. And by say research, not just Google, I read at least 3 books, cover to cover. I talked to people, and I knew that I was definitely not going to have any day one of birth. No. And I would maybe wait until about 4 or 5 months and do one at a time with the vaccines. I think that was the huge thing that none of my friends knew, because it's a personal decision. It's private. But when COVID cropped up, vaccines were the only thing that separated me from checking off every Democrat box. And at the time, I didn't know at the very beginning that
So this was like your kickstart.
This was my kickstart. I did not know it was going to be political with the vaccines. So I'm sitting here just chugging along, and my sister's like, oh, they're coming out with this vaccine. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to take that. And then as it's getting more amped up, my sister's like, it's very, like, Democrats don't like that you're not going to take that, Nicole. And I was like, it's not political, Cheetah. It's like everyone's got their own choice. And she was like, no, like, it's political. And I was like, no, it's not. And then eventually, as it's getting I was like, hot dog, every Democrat can't stand that I don't want to get this vaccine. And what blew my mind was I had been to marches for like your body, your choice.
You've been a hardcore Democrat, and everyone was turning against you because you didn't want to put an experimental vaccine, which we know does not work the way they said it was going to work, into your body.
100%. And I remember talking to a couple of my friends that were Democrats, and I was like, but I'm trying to avoid saying names. One of them was like a former Chicago public school teacher friend of mine that we are actually no longer friends, unfortunately. But and for no big thing, I think it was just a fading out, kind of related to ideology shifts. But she was just, I was like, it's your body, your choice. Like, remember? Like, us women? Like, it's our bodies. And she was like, no, but this is for the good of everybody. And you have to get this. And I was just mind blown. And I was like, wow. So when it became very clear that it was 100% political, there was this party that I had identified with that was basically spewing hatred onto me. And then there was this party that was like, come, come, you could come in our group. I felt very much at the time like conservatives, and I was living in Tennessee at the time, were either like, whether they got it or not, all of them felt like it should be your choice. Our neighbors that were all Republican and conservative because we're living in Tennessee, a lot of them had gotten it, but they're like, it should be your choice, you know? And then there were some that hadn't. But the biggest thing was my husband at the time. You know, we moved to Tennessee because he worked for this great company. It's a medical equipment company. They paid for us to move out there. He was making great money. They came down with the vaccine mandate. And I watched Biden with the red backdrop. I don't know if that was it, but you know, something about like, you have to be vaccinated or you're going to be,
a
you know,
winter of severe death and illness.
Death and illness. And so my husband and I were just like, what? We were freaking out because his company came out with that. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to do the religious exemption. Like, you're going to be fine. We did all this research. We wrote the whole letter out. It was beautiful. He submitted it and they were like, yeah, no. They ended up firing him. And at the time I wasn't even working. We had 2 little kids. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, it just ripped the rug out from under us. He got fired. And then the problem was he couldn't get another job because everyone's now screening if he's vaccinated. So we basically tore through so much of our savings, took a huge financial hit. He finally was able to get another job, which was such a blessing. But when he got fired, I was just like, how people don't see that this is such an insane government overreach is like blows my mind. I'm like, they could force you to put anything into your body and then fire you and withhold money from you if you don't do it. And like, I couldn't understand how like my friends on the left didn't see that.
And specifically with that scenario, are you seeing the different suits and things that are happening now?
Yeah. And it's funny because we do talk about it. I'm like, we actually did consult a lawyer at the time, but you know, you're between a rock and a hard place. He's all of a sudden cut off from income. The lawyer needed a $5,000 to $10,000 retainer. And we're just like,
they make it impossible for you.
Yeah, they make it impossible. So that was kind of like the biggest thing. But even during all this time, like when he got fired, I was under so much duress. We were all under so much duress. And I think the biggest reason why he didn't get it too, I will say he's very fit. He does mountain biking. He's in the prime of his health. So I think A, he was like, F that. I don't want to take a risk. But B, we just ideologically, we're like against it. We're like, no, you don't get to tell us what we're doing. And we just know that we're all healthy in our family. And I was already very hesitant on vaccines with my children. So I just knew there was no way in hell we were going to do this. But for me, it was more the point. It wasn't even the medicine, which, yeah, like it was the point. Like, how dare you? So then I didn't tell most of my friends because I could already see like where people's viewpoints were. And I happened to be friends with all liberals, like and all Democrats. I was like, shit.
And this is in Tennessee?
Well, it was in Tennessee. So I still had my friends from back home. My friends in Tennessee, I did tell because they were all on the same page. We were all on the same page. I honestly think God brought us to Tennessee about 5 months before COVID hit. And I think he saved me my sanity. I don't think I wouldn't have survived up here in this craziness of Illinois. Because in Tennessee, it was like my kids never once wore a mask.
And yet you came back.
Yeah, I know. I came back like once people started to wake up a little bit, and
Yeah.
like I was
I
like,
still don't think everyone's woken up though.
maybe not. And that's the other thing. I think I probably assume more people are awake than they really are. I don't know why I assume that.
I think it's more ignorance than anything. Like people won't talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, so like
No,
the
that's
people
true.
that I'll kind of drop, you know, because I don't want to make you feel stupid. I hope you do feel a little stupid.
Yeah.
Because it will drive you to do a little bit more research next time.
Yeah.
Like, who's making this vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
These crime, like you look up
For profit.
You look
Yeah.
up the history of
I
like
know.
Pfizer.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars in fines. Billions. All of them. Billions of dollars in fines. And we've talked about it before on the show that the drug Vioxx had killed 60,000 people and they paid like a $3 billion fine, but they made like $9 billion. So they profited
So
$6
gross.
billion.
Yeah.
It's all for profit.
Yep.
So, but what I was saying was I really think people, I don't think they've necessarily woken up. I think they're just avoiding the conversation because
Yeah.
they're not willing to say, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And some of those people dug their heels in so hard.
Yeah.
So hard. Without any sort of research, without any sort of real opinion, just what CNN, what MSN, what NBC, what they all told them, what Biden said,
Yeah.
what Fauci said.
Yeah.
Where's Fauci, by the way?
Yeah.
What happened to
That's a
Fauci?
valid point, dude. Fauci
He was out here
he
saying,
got real quiet.
oh, God, the videos put together on social media are amazing.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
the
I did
sketches,
not
I know.
tell the president to shut down the country. And then that stops and it goes to the next video. Like, oh, I recommended that we shut down the country.
Yeah.
And it's quote from Fauci,
So
Fauci. It's,
crazy.
the internet is awesome.
Yeah.
It definitely has its negatives.
Yeah.
But there are some pros to it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, where were we just at right
Well,
before that? Right before my
okay.
little rant.
Dang it. Like,
Son of a-
well, okay. So we'll just meet with me not telling like my Democrat.
Oh, that's right,
friends,
yeah.
I think is what. But and I did, and I think also we were talking about kind of like why I assume I do think some people, because I've heard people verbalize regret about getting the vaccine that I've known personally.
Do you know people that have been like hurt?
Oh
by
yeah,
it?
yeah. Like, well, this contractor guy that came to our house. I mean, he's awesome, but he was like, he said his heart will never be the same. He's super fit, super in shape. He's like, I'm so mad I got it. And I mean, so I've heard that one of my best friends, she feels at the time she was doing what she thought was right, and now she said it re-triggered all of her autoimmune issues that were
That's the one that I hear the most
her
of.
autoimmune issues. So definitely, but I think some people, it's hard for them to admit it because they took it. You can't untake it, and I get it.
Well, you have to sit there and say like I messed up,
Yeah,
and that's
Yeah,
really tough to
it's-
do in
yeah.
any situation. And then with
Yeah.
the magnitude of this one,
yeah.
it's even tougher to say. It's even tougher to admit.
I know. I know it is. I don't know. Yeah. So eventually, I mean, so all of my college friends that I was telling you about, I didn't tell any of them on purpose because I knew what they
You were
all
scared?
thought. But eventually it came out once my husband got fired, one of them had called me and I off the cusp told her he got fired for that. And I thought it was going to be private between us. Like, she ended up putting something about anti-vaxxers in a group chat. And I got and so then the whole thing, so then I had to basically tell everyone, we didn't talk for like 3 years. Any of my college friends, I actually thought we were never going to be friends again because of that. And so, but I will say we've circled back, and it's interesting because like we're friends again, kind of. I don't think it'll ever be fully the same, but I think we're only friends again because the dust has settled on that. And I think they have a little bit, maybe, of some subconscious clarity on their overreact.
They're gonna watch this.
I know. Oh my God, I'm telling anyone this. No, I don't know. I mean, I love them, and it's like I can forgive or whatever. Not many people have apologized to me either for like
I've
how
had a
they've
couple.
treated me.
I've had a couple.
You've had a couple.
apologize,
I heard
but
you say that on one of your things.
Yeah,
I
there's,
really haven't.
I think only 2. Honestly, I think only 2 people have reached out and apologized. But I was.
That's good. That
Yeah,
says
I'm
a
not
lot.
expecting it.
Yeah, no.
I would rather everyone just kind of look in the mirror and say like, all right, I'm gonna do better in the future.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to hear
Yeah.
you say sorry.
Yeah.
I knew I was right. And
I know.
it is what it
but
is.
it's just like you do kind of want validation a little bit. It's
you
like
do,
I know.
and it's hard not to gloat
Yeah.
a little bit.
I know.
Because the propaganda was insane.
It was so insane.
You
I
had guys
know.
eating burgers and fries. You
know,
had
I
free
know.
donuts. You had
know.
free this. You had
Yeah.
free that. You had incentivizing with jobs and financial stability. You had
Oh my
all
gosh.
of that. And I like to think, I was actually thinking about this the other day. If I had some sort of corporate job, which I would never, but if I had some sort
Yeah.
of corporate job and they were like, you got to get the vaccine,
Yeah.
I really like to think
Yeah.
that there's no way I would give it.
Yeah.
But
I know.
if you are the breadwinner
I know. Yeah.
and your family and your
Yeah.
kids and your
Yeah.
wife and your house, and it's
I
all
know.
relying on that,
Yeah.
I honestly can't
I
sit
know.
here and say
I know.
that I would not give in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There
I
were-
could understand.
Yeah.
I could
No,
totally understand.
Like, why? I get it. Well, because like my cousin, her husband was in the military. He's not going to kiss away however many years he's been. If he didn't get it, he would have been kicked out. Like, there were some people that really couldn't afford to say he didn't want to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I had one moment with my husband because he was making good money and like and I was like, do you want to get it? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, you're right. That was stupid. I'm sorry. And then I dropped it. And I will say to this day, it is the most proud thing that as a family that we made that choice. It is the most proud thing
very
that we
cool.
stood by our scruples. But had he said he would have, it breaks my heart, honestly, in a way that I think I would have allowed him for the safety of our
family.
financial security. But my God, I might not have had a husband. I mean, truly, because he is one of those guys that's like working his heart to the nth degree mountain biking. absolutely. I'm like, by the grace of God, I'm so glad that he stuck to his guns on it. And it was worth every penny we lost. And it was worth all the trauma.
Typically with the people that are sharing the conversation that you are sharing, where they kind of like did this flip and they woke
Yeah.
up, they have someone that sort of
Oh, yeah.
pushed them.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have someone?
I do. I'm glad you asked.
Give him a shout out.
I'm gonna give a shout out. I'm gonna start it off with my brother. So this is I think about this all the time. How have I been able to make this shift when so many other people don't? And I think the biggest reason is that I'll give a shout out to my brother Mitch. He'll probably listen to this, but I had the safety of my family. So throughout COVID, throughout the BLM stuff, which I had even gone to a couple pro BLM marches as well. We'll just wearing a mask outside. It wasn't a proud moment. I even knew that. I knew that was stupid. But during this time, my brother and my dad started being like, they liked Trump. And I'd gotten in these knockdown, screamy matches with my dad, like, you're a racist. I mean, no, truly. And they liked Trump. And I was like, you guys are insane. And how? I had out-of-body anxiety the day Trump won. I don't know why. I cried.
Oh my God.
I cried. I drove to work. I had disassociative anxiety. Like I literally can tell you, it's like I knew where I was when 9/11 happened, and I could tell you where I was when Trump won. I mean, that's how ridiculous.
Oh my God.
Let me just tell you though, I will be voting for him in this next election. Not that it's going to matter in Illinois, but that's how far I've come. And
so, sorry to stop you. Trump derangement syndrome is like...
It's real.
It's a funny thing that Republicans like to say.
Yeah, but it's so
you
real.
have Trump derangement syndrome, and I've heard it from several people, and I'll pick and poke, and I'll be like, "But can you tell me why you don't like him?" And it was always, "Well, he's racist."
Yeah.
It's like, well, can you give an example when he's racist? It's like, oh my God, you don't know when he was racist?
No.
Oh my God, I'm not even going to talk to you.
No,
I'm not. This conversation isn't even worth our time. Like, you don't even know that
God,
Trump is
so
racist and he's sexist and misogynist.
I know.
And I've even asked one girl, I was like, can you describe what misogyny is? And they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They could not do it.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking of one. It was when the whole like the grab him by the pee thing. I think I was kind of hung up on that. Now in hindsight,
it's locker room talk.
Yeah. Now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, it's locker room talk. But at the time, I was like, oh my God.
I mean, the fact is, every politician, every human has some sort of moment where they're with their buddy or they're with their friend and they have that locker room talk. No one is PC 100% of the time.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And
he didn't even know he's being recorded.
I know.
So
that being said, is he going to be? I don't know.
I don't think it was good to say. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm not saying. I'm not saying go talk about grabbing people by the pussy. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But to act like everyone in this world,
no, totally
not said something
right,
like that
at some point. No, I agree. But yes, so like full Trump derangement syndrome, the BLM stuff's going on. My brother actually pointed out like that there was one point where I was like, I don't know, maybe we just need to let everything burn. And he was like, so like that's where I was. But because I had the safety of my family, my brother in particular was like, Nicole, we would have these huge conversations of him trying to deprogram me from systemic racism. Okay. And I'd be like, so he would give me books. So this is where I started reading other books. So I read Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. White redneck. I don't know. I think it's Black Rednecks, White Liberals by Thomas Sowell.
Do you know what it is, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I know Thomas Sowell. And
Sowell.
He's the man.
He's the man. So I started reading. I was like, oh, like things I didn't know about slavery, like the actual history, like just different things. I read a book by Candace Owens. I was like, okay,
she's my girl.
So she's my girl too.
Oh, I love Candace Owens
too. Okay, but I read her book, and these were all people, by the way. I hated Candace, but then
why?
Exactly. I don't know, because people I hated
because she's a racist black person.
Because she's a racist black person. Black voices should be heard unless you're a conservative black voice. Then no, it shouldn't. So all the things. But because my brother, who I trusted and who I loved, was like, read this book. I think I read 3 books. It was like Candace, Thomas Sowell, and this other guy, Dave. Oh, he's gay. He's a gay white conservative. I can't think of his name right now. My brother. Okay. But I mean, I started and I was like, oh, okay. So like, and then through conversations with someone that I knew wasn't a racist asshole at his core. And I even had to ask him that. because he would be like against affirmative action. And I'd be like, why? Like, do you just not like black people? And he's like, Nicole, I really like black people, that I want them to not be enslaved by the Democratic Party. And I was like, okay. So like, it was this whole years and like, not years, but a time frame of my brother and I conversating within like a safe space. I hate using that word, but you know what I mean? Where I can ask him these hard questions of these opinions that I had of Republicans. And then he was willing to answer me. And I think that combined with Craig getting fired, combined with living in the Bible Belt and realizing it's not a bunch of racist Nazis, actually, it's a bunch of integrated people that just care about each other. And then I think also kind of eventually becoming a Christian, that it all just happened. And then I just kind of did a full 180. I will say my entire family, and there's 7 of us, went from all being Democrats to essentially all being Republicans. Ooh. It took different times
Turn
and
that
staggers.
mic a little bit now. Turn it toward, like, spin it.
Okay, like that?
Yeah, it's the top should spin.
Okay, sorry. Okay, there you go. We all left. We all left the Democratic Party, and I think it's slightly different intervals, but I think we were all having these conversations together. We were all against them. No one in my family, not in my dad, who's had a quadruple heart bypass, did not get the vaccine. My mom did not get the vaccine. None of us got that COVID vaccine, and I think that was kind of the eye-opener, ironically enough, along with the BLM riots and with my dad and my brother kind of starting to see things from a different angle. We all moved to becoming Republicans, essentially. I mean, I don't know if I want to say conservative or Republican, but so that was interesting.
Well, I have a quick question.
Go.
So when, obviously you had a change of heart about religion and how
Yeah.
religious people are viewed.
Yeah.
That's always been a really interesting topic
Ooh,
for me.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Because just in conversation, when you bring up religion, people are like, oh, like he's religious.
Totally.
You know, so like I never understood. I'm not very religious.
Yeah.
I have to be completely honest. I am kind of falling that way naturally and very organically.
Yeah. Yep.
Again, I don't know. It's kind of a gray area for me, but I never had a real issue
Yeah.
with religious people.
Yeah.
Every religious person I've ever met, almost every single one has been a sweet, kind person.
Yeah.
So when people say like, oh, he's religious, he believes in God. And and it was looking back, it was definitely liberals who were very like anti-religion.
Totally.
So what sort of viewpoint, I know you said like racist Nazis, but how did you view religion and how did you view religious people to the point where like you were like, you didn't want to be associated with them?
Yeah, 100%. And I think about that a lot. I was so against religion and organized religion that when we moved to Tennessee, the only preschools they had were like Christian, and I was like, oh, I will not send my kid to a Christian. I can't even for sure tell you why. I can make some guesses as to why I felt like that. But this is another one of those things where I feel like this belief was somehow given to me. I don't know how it got ingrained in my soul from the left, but somehow it did. I can't tell you why. All I know is when I moved to Tennessee, I was like, I will drive. I ended up driving 45 minutes to take my kid to a secular preschool because I was so against a Christian preschool, which is ridiculous. Finally, after a couple of years of me driving 45 minutes to take my kid to I was like, okay, forget that. We're going to the Christian preschool, and it was the best experience. The kindest of people. And really, I would credit my 6-year-old. He would come home and he started talking about God and Jesus. And I was like, he's really responding to this stuff. And it was just for me going there every day, talking to the principal, talking to the teachers, seeing that they were the kindest hearted, most caring human beings. And I was like, what was I thinking? Why was I so against this? And then I think my friends that were Christian, that were not judgmental, but like loving and wonderful and wholesome, that it was like, again, a slow thaw of like my hatred for Christianity. And then eventually I'm like, I do go to a church now every Sunday. It's the best part of my week. It's the most amazing church. I love it. I do feel
What
like
church?
It's called Fox Valley Church. It's in right by Menards off of Randall Road. It is something special about that church. And I can't explain it, but it's just beautiful. If you want to come for Easter, they're having lots of services. But there was also something pivotal. I think God sought me out. I think it had been a slow seeking for a bit of like me kind of like letting some of my hard walls against. Christianity kind of started to come down a little bit, but then there was a very specific, aggressive seeking me out that really brought me back to God, which might be a story for another day. We'll talk about that later. But I think if I'm to look back in I do a lot of trying to get in the brain of who I was before to try to understand the disdain for the right. And I think it's because they assume Christians are very judgmental. Maybe they don't like gays. I mean, or whatever it is. And, the reality is, there's certain biblical teachings that may not support the transgender movement or whatever. But I think most of the people that I have met in my church specifically are people that come from all walks of life that have had abortions, that have had drug addiction. Really, what I realized and what I didn't know was that people that go to Jesus and go to church are people that are broken and that are looking for healing. And I think that the perception is you're all perfect and you all think you're morally superior might have been what I thought before. So I have to do this kind of weird hop where I'll try to figure out why did I hate Christians so much? Where did that come from?
I when you say that, I can see why someone would say that. We're perfect. We believe in God. We go to church.
So maybe that's where it came.
I could see that, and I've probably felt that in a sense, but it's never felt. They've always been pretty humble.
Yeah.
They're definitely set in their ways.
Sure.
And maybe that's what sort of made it kind of not humble.
Yeah, and there can be, and I still struggle. So this is another. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. He's Jewish, so I'm half Jewish, technically ish. I think it goes through the mother's lineage, but he was a Holocaust survivor. So is it easy for me as a Christian to think if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going straight to hell? I don't love that. I kind of came to a peace where
the Bible says that though, yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, essentially, but I've kind of come to a peace where I feel like. All I can do is try to live a life. I like Jesus as a person. I think he seems like a good person. He's God, but I can just live my best life and leave that. That's for Jesus and God to handle. And I'm not going to I used to think it was kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, my grandfather was Jewish and I don't believe so I'm just not, but I don't think that's really where you need to focus your energy on if you're learning about Christianity. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was always a turnoff for me with the Christian faith is that you have to believe this or you're going straight to hell. I don't know if I still believe
not
that.
only do you have to believe it, but you have to preach it and you have to say it and you have to pray.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what always pushed me away a little bit.
And I still struggle with it a little bit. I just realized I don't need to know. We certainly don't know all the answers. I don't know what God's plan is. All I know is my grandpa was a great human being. He was a Holocaust survivor, which I think also ties into, I'm all over the place and you're doing such a good job following me. I think my natural inclination to distrust, which is why I thought it was so fascinating that Jews were a lot of Jews were all on board with the vaccine. And I'm we had medical experimentation done on our people. My grandfather, heck no. So I think I've always had a distrust of government or just people in general because my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. So that also, I think, ties into why my family and I we don't just buy things hook, line, and sinker and assume people have our best interests at heart. And I think that's a large reason why. But anyway, I'm all over the board.
Yeah, again, to kind of go back to our point, I think that is the factor. That's kind of the X factor of why people switch is they don't buy everything hook, line, and sinker. They have maybe one question, then that one question leads to two, and the two questions lead to three, and then you learn this about this company, and you're wait, but this company gets paid to make this no matter what? Oh, wait, you can't sue the vaccine company?
Yeah.
But there are adverse reactions, so why can't I sue them if I get in trouble? That's so weird. And then you start digging, and then you learn that, eggs aren't supposed to be white. Eggs come out brown in other colors.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to get my own chickens.
Yeah.
All right, well, now I got my own chickens. Wait a second. They vaccinate the cows too? Why are they vaccinating the cows? That's not, where's that meat coming from?
Yeah.
Wait, they're feeding them grain, not grass?
Yeah.
And you just kind of keep going and going, and it's this tumbleweed effect.
I've heard memes that it says it all starts with chickens.
I've heard that too.
Have you heard that?
I've heard
Which
that
is
too.
funny, but and I'm all in on all the things. I do prioritize health. We get organic. I order my meat from this farm in Indiana. So all the things. And I had always been
if you ever want to switch, North Pasture Farms.
Okay.
We get it delivered to our gym.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Tell me that. Tell me about that after.
Yeah.
'Cause I do. I've just been using that one company.
So good.
But I do.
Oh.
I love all of that. And so again, that was part of who I had already been. And so then also, but I'm not going to inject this random vax. Like that's not. I live healthfully. I trust my immune system. So that was also part of it, I think. But yes, the questioning, right, is like I think what that. Yeah.
And the logic that was required for
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you need to get the vaccine for other people.
I know.
But the other people got the vaccine.
No, I can't.
So that alone, that COVID logic, I really think
Yeah.
it woke up a lot of people. And
Yeah.
it sounds like that was kind of the catalyst for you too, sort of.
Yeah, it was. It was like so stupid. I couldn't, the amount of
good, Alex? What was
bending
it?
over. So then it's like, well, no, my one friend was like, but if I get it, like I have like less symptoms. So I'm less like, and I was like, so that's making you an asymptomatic carrier, which actually is worse. Like it was like the amount of bending over backwards and hoops you had to jump through.
Well, this was the first vaccine
I know.
that everyone had to get it for it to work.
Yeah.
It was the first one where
Yeah.
that was the
It doesn't
campaign.
make any sense. And then if you had gotten it, so vaccines are supposed to replicate immunity,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have a natural immunity, that can't count.
Yeah, which we know is better now.
Which is bad. I've gotten COVID once and I didn't die and I was fine and I had a headache for 3 days.
It was
But
pretty
like-
bad.
yeah, I mean, you know, for some people, like I got like a late wave. I somehow dodged maybe because we were in Tennessee. So I think by the time I got it, it wasn't horrible.
Me too.
But
I don't know what variant I had.
Yeah.
But it knocked me
Yeah,
out
I
pretty
mean, it's
good.
like any
It was a
sickness.
solid 24 hours. It probably wasn't even 24, but like one of those sicknesses where you're like, I'm considering death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was
No,
like, oh my
it's-
God, my
it's
head
bad.
hurts so bad. I tried to take a bath. I tried to take a nap.
oh, that could be me.
Someone's vibrating.
Just ignore that.
But yeah, it was pretty bad, but it was not worse than the worst flu I've had.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was just a sickness.
It was just a sickness. And yeah, that was so strange. The hoops people had to jump through. And I'm like, and then my friends who had gotten multiple boosters had vaccines so many times, you know, and I'm just like, you guys are crazy. Like, how do you not see? It's still hard for me to understand how some people just don't see, you know, but one other thing, because you know you had mentioned just to, like now I want to scooch back to the Trump derangement syndrome because you'll laugh at this too. So as much as I hated Trump and I had the whole Trump derangement syndrome. I went to Tennessee and this was kind of another like eye opener for me. When I was there, I was friends with this nurse practitioner. She's a mom of 3 kids. We were friends. She was super sweet. I think she was an anti-vaxxer too. So we had that in common and we would talk about that. And I went to her house for a play date and I remember she had a Trump magnet on her fridge. And it was like, like I was like, oh my God, whose house am I? Where, you know, and
She's gonna kill me.
I literally thought
she's
she was
murderer.
going to kill me. I was like, this lady, I don't even know her. And now I look back and I'm like, who has that response to a magnet of somebody? So I think that's what's so interesting is like that visceral response can't be normal. Something built up in me from something I was saying to give me these insane, irrational responses to a woman that I knew who was kind and responsible just because she liked Trump. So yeah, that was another funny moment of mine.
Yeah, that was a really interesting thing that's a really interesting thing to point out too, is I do think I have not witnessed a ton of elections and I have not paid a ton of attention to politics, but this I feel like was one of the only times where like you can fully know someone.
Yeah.
You know, you can know who they are as a person. You can know what they do in their free time. You can know what they do as a job. You can know they're a good person. But as soon as they say, oh, I'm voting for Trump, they
Yeah.
do this flip in your head where like, oh, that's now a bad person.
Yeah.
Even though you know they're a good person.
Totally.
That happened to
I
me
know.
a couple times,
That's
I would
so
say.
interesting.
Where people's perceptions of me completely changed when I would just want to have a conversation, be like, who you voting for?
Yeah.
And they would say Biden, like, oh, I'm voting for Trump.
I know.
And it would just be like,
100%.
oh my God.
I still.
We cannot talk.
I know.
We
It's
can't have a conversation.
Strange. And one thing my brother always says, which I do think is true now, he goes, conservatives can be friends with liberals. Liberals cannot be friends with conservatives. They have a very hard time. Do you think that's true or no?
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I would honestly have a hard time being a friend with a liberal.
Fair.
I really would.
Yeah, fair.
Because I think a liberal, and this is a whole other conversation, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because this is the Unpolished podcast.
Yeah.
Because in today's world, a liberal is for a 12-year-old getting a double mastectomy and changing their getting gender reassignment surgery. And that's a hill I will die on. I will never, ever fucking support that. I will never support that, especially after doing the deep dive on it. There's not a chance I could ever support it. If you look, and I encourage anyone listening, look up what a double mastectomy looks like. Look up what a female to male surgery looks like. It's crazy. It's just this. It's a bundle of skin sewn to your lady parts. That doesn't work. It doesn't have sperm.
Horrific.
It doesn't get hard. It doesn't do anything. It's just a phallic shape hanging there.
Yeah, that's not good.
And this, so to go back, I could be your friend, but I'm not going to agree with you.
Sure. Yeah.
And because I'm not going to agree with you, I don't think you want to be my friend.
Yeah. Well,
so it's like kind of like let's bygones, and let's just agree to disagree, and we probably won't hang out.
That's
type
what
of thing.
is.
But I will be your friend. Like if you need help, if we are already friends, and that's your viewpoint, whatever. I'm going to call you an idiot, and I think you're kind of a child abuser.
Yeah.
If you agree with that.
Yeah.
But kids can't get tattoos, and kids can't drink, but they can change their gender. Crazy.
I know. It is crazy. I do think you're right. I mean, I probably only have like one or two that are liberal, but even then I think it's one of those, what you were saying, where with my friends that are liberal at this point, I still don't know that they would be on board with that though. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like differential like layers of what you're on board with as a liberal, because I think the goalpost has gotten so out there, like so far left, that even my friends, like my college friends that I've circled back with, I don't know that they would really be on board with that. I know for sure one of them we've talked and like wouldn't be. So that being said, and I do agree. I think like my deepest friendships are with people that realize this entire system is rigged. Like it's all corrupt.
It's all rigged.
So like that is my deepest friendships. With some, we just leave. We don't talk about politics. And
Yep. And I can relate that to a lot of the people I just know for whatever. Actually, so I had a interesting conversation with someone who I got in a pretty bad verbal argument with.
Yeah.
It was him and a friend, and his friend was Hispanic, and we were talking about the Trump election.
Okay.
And I was like, so who you guys voting for? And I'm just making conversation because that's what I do. And I like to ruffle the feathers.
I do the same thing. I love that about you.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm voting for Trump. And they both just lose it. And the Hispanic's like, I was like, why don't, but like, give me like a reason, like you won't vote for Trump. And he just says this, what he did to my people? Are you kidding me? What he did to and I was like, I'm just asking, what did he do to your people?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh my God, Steve, come on. And I was like,
what?
Can you tell me what he did to your people? Like, what did he do? Like, I really don't know what he did.
Yeah.
And he's like, he kicked them all out. I was like, well, were they illegal? And he goes, oh my God, I cannot talk to you. And I'm just like, okay.
Didn't Obama kick a lot more people out than? Okay, anyway.
Put him in cages too.
Yeah.
If we really want to get specific.
Yeah.
But that person who was with that Hispanic friend, he said something the other day. He was like, I'm actually, instead of just hating Trump, instead of hating the people that voted for him, I'm really trying to understand
Thank you.
why he has such a following.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah,
keep digging.
That.
And that's really all I said.
Yeah.
I
That's
was like,
the $1 million question.
I said, I've been trying to get you to do that this whole time.
Yes.
Because I don't like Trump.
Yeah.
I don't like him.
It's like a person or what? I want to hear this.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
The way he talks.
Sure.
He's a clear narcissist.
Yeah. 100%.
Clear, and like look at his show, like you're fired. Like the Apprentice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a clear narcissist.
Yeah.
He's an okay public speaker. There are a million others that are way better than him. Mm-hmm. He's divisive in the idea that he's not even remotely politically correct.
Yeah. True.
And I think there are people who can be more politically correct.
And we can appreciate some of that.
Yeah, like Robert. I like Robert Kennedy in that aspect.
Yeah, he's great. Love him.
I think he does a great job of speaking. And when he does say something controversial, he says why he's saying it controversial.
Yeah.
Whereas like Trump literally remember when he did the
Yeah.
like,
That
come
was
on, Trump, what,
I
are you
know.
stupid?
I know.
You know,
I know.
and I really don't like him that much as a person.
Sure. Yeah.
I think he's like a typical multimillionaire, billionaire that's just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when he was running the country,
Yeah.
things were awesome.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to ignore that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to ignore the $2 gas.
Yeah.
It's hard to ignore the booming economy. It's
Yeah.
hard to ignore all that. And then COVID
Totally.
sort of tore it all down, and it seems COVID was political.
Yeah.
So then you associate that with the sides, and it's just like, all right, I got more questions. Let
For
me keep
sure.
asking questions. Why can't I ask questions?
Yes.
And you get freaking villainized if you're just like, well, maybe I'm going to wait to get this vaccine.
Yeah.
But it's your turn. It's your
know.
turn to get
I
it. Get it for
know.
grandma.
I know. I
I
can't.
don't think I want grandma to get it either.
100%.
It's like, oh, so you want grandma to die? It's
Yeah.
like, Jesus
I
Christ, this
know.
is so bizarre.
it's so ridiculous. But yeah, like
Do you feel like kind of the same way with Trump? Or do you just
well,
like
no, I feel similar, but I do have a different kind of like perspective too, or angle. One, I love that friend of yours, he said, I want to understand why. And here's the thing that I didn't do as a Democrat that I wish I would have. If half of the country, like somebody, instead of just saying half of the country is pieces of shit idiots, better to seek to understand the why. And I think because that's valid. And I didn't do that. Now I do. And for all the reasons you said, 100% agree. But I think for me, it's deeper than that. I think that I've come to see that the criminal, I guess I wanted to get all conspiracy theory-ish, but just the deep state, he is not part of whatever that is, right? He is not part of, he's a rogue dude that somehow made his way in because of his money. And I think when you see the orchestration of corruption, if you are not of that, that is who I want. Unfortunately, the person that can contend to be a president who is not of that darkness is not polished. He's rough around the edges. He's not even somebody I'd want to be friends with, but that's all we got. That's all we got. We got to go with it. I love RFK. I think his wife holds him back. I don't know. I love him. I think the work he does is so good. You know,
he's an amazing work.
He's an amazing person. I think he's a truth speaker. We're so desperate for someone that's just honest and that's just going to be truthful. Even if you're unpolished about it and rude and crass, I will take that any day over these seasoned liars that look nice. And with Obama, I mean, I canvassed for Obama. I loved Obama. Even as I was making this transition to the right, I would always say, take Obama from my cold, dead hands. Can't take Obama from me. I've read all of his books. Now I see, the more information I got, I'm like, he wasn't what I thought he was, But I think for me, that's with Trump. Yes, the economy's better, but he is not a part of the matrix of whatever the heck is going on with the powers that be that want us in constant war and constant control. That's how I see it. Okay, you probably see it the same way too.
Yeah, no, I see it very similarly. Yeah. He's kind of like that rogue figure.
He's a rogue
figure. And we just had a guest, Brett Brendel, on, and he said, they're not coming for me. He said, Trump said, they're not coming for me.
Yeah,
I'm just in the way of them getting to you.
Yeah.
And that's how I've kind of always seen Trump. Even though there's some questionable things, like when Trump was like, it's my vaccine, and he takes full credit for this vaccine that was a clear failure.
It's weird.
And I think, but that's his narcissism.
Yes.
He's like, I made that.
100%. That is his narcissism.
Yeah, and he would have to go out and say, I was wrong, which he ain't going to do that.
But he has said, and all I care about is he wouldn't have mandated it. I don't care how much he loves that vaccine.
He did say, you get it if you want, if you don't, whatever.
Yeah, that's all we asked for. I don't care if he fucking loves that vaccine. Don't force it into people's bodies. That's it. So whoever is going to not force it is who I'm going with. Under Biden, my husband got fired and we got ostracized, and it was the most divisive time in our country. Yeah,
that was the media during those times.
Oof.
What's that Asian lady's name on CNN, Alex? You probably know, where she's like, we have to start barring the unvaccinated. We have to start taking things away. We have to start treating them different.
I know. I know.
Crazy.
It's so crazy. And I tell people, like, I know there was like a weird, like, and I mentioned to you about my grandfather being like Jewish and Holocaust survivor. And I think that there's been some weird, obviously, Israel, Palestine stuff going on and the, whatever. And I know my brother or family members will say, oh, like anti-Semitism is up. And, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm like, none of that. I have never felt more oppressed or ostracized as I did being an unvaccinated person than being a Jew or whatever, or a Christian. I mean, so yeah, I don't know where I was like going with that, but my point is like, that was just a dark time of like, I felt very alone. I can't imagine in Illinois, you must have been pulling your hair out. Was it rough?
It wasn't too bad. And I
Okay.
think it's because I own my own business.
Yeah.
You know, so like
That's
I
huge.
can really isolate myself. My wife had to go through the ringer for sure, the spitting and the testing every week. And,
Yeah.
but me personally, Al, you weren't a member yet.
No, not
you
yet.
met me after COVID,
After.
pretty much. Yeah. But we didn't really shut down. I've probably said a million different things, but I'm pretty sure it was only like between like 2 and 4 weeks we were like shut down. And that's when I did my first podcast, the AM podcast.
Okay.
That blew up. And I did not
Really?
know it was as blown up as it was until after the fact. And that's kind of why this one came back.
Interesting. Okay.
But I opened up shop. I just didn't put anything on Instagram and Facebook, and people were
Okay.
just asking. They're like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm losing my mind. Can I
know.
come to your gym?
I know.
And there was kind of like this word of mouth, and then he would tell them, and I would tell people, hey, like, cool it. Like, let's not tell the whole world. Looking back, I should have just been like, I'm open.
Yeah.
Come
I
on
know,
in. Like,
I
everyone,
know.
free membership, and just made
Sure.
a big, I wish I would have done that, made a bigger deal out of
But
it.
then you would have drawn attention to yourself, and who knows what would have happened. I mean, yeah.
So no, I didn't get, social media, I got torn apart.
Okay. Did
Torn
you?
apart because I would share things like, I remember one post, I was close friends with a guy in the medical industry, and he would sell medical things to hospitals, and he
Okay.
shared a story that he had a rash, just like a regular rash, and he went in and they said, oh, it could be because of COVID. And he's like, a rash because of COVID? And I shared it on Facebook, and everyone's like, well, it could be the symptom, and you're such an anti blah, blah, blah. And blah, blah, blah. It's just like, oh my God, you guys are insane.
Yeah. Insane.
You're insane. Where I'm just like trying to make people ask questions. Pretty sure that's what I put on like everything. Like, I hope you're asking questions. Ask questions. Dig deeper.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
Because it's so frowned upon.
I know.
It's been made out to be so frowned upon and so whatever.
No, the whole thing. I look back. I mean, I feel like I still have PTSD from. I was just like, how did we get through that? It was just so crazy. I mean, the masks. I got in fights with. I would come back to Illinois and like I wouldn't wear a mask. I'd get chased around and yelled at, and all the things. That's like you have to like.
Did you actually get chased around and yelled?
Yeah, I went to I was somewhere in the Commons. I went to some store and some girls like yelling at me, following me around. I'm like, it was just insanity. But I would start to push back because I'm like, this is insane. I'm done playing this weird game with you guys. And I think from me coming from Tennessee, because we were so spoiled, because we were never required to wear masks, coming to Illinois, it just pissed me off. I was like, you guys are crazy. And then when my sister would come to Tennessee, she would be like, oh my God, it's amazing here. Like, it's just like there was no one. Oh, there wasn't a single Ukraine flag anywhere. Like, we just didn't fall for all this propaganda. And like people it was just so different. I don't know. I loved it. But we are back. But you know what? I think it'll be okay.
The move is to make everyone go back to Tennessee with you.
Yeah, I know. We tried. We had all these angles.
Did you really?
We did. We were like, come on, guys. And my sister was close. The thing is, her kids are older and they were very connected to like their friends, and I get it. But I'm
know.
like, it's a beautiful place. But then there's a part of me too that's like, there is a need for people like us here too.
I know.
Right? We can't all just like
know.
run and hide out. So it's like, no, I'm going
I
to
tell
speak my
people,
truth. And
we want to go south.
I know.
And without going into too much information, but every time I say it, there will be people like, well, then who's going to be the voice up here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, come on, find
I
another
know.
one.
I know.
I'm done with winter.
I know.
I'm so done with the.
No, I know the winter's bad.
It's so
It's
bad.
bad.
It's like we had 70 degrees, 2 weeks ago, 3
Yeah,
weeks ago?
yeah.
And now it's freaking 30
I
again.
know. But I will say, I feel like this winter was really,
Mild.
mild. I was like, not bad for my first. I was worried, we're not going to probably retire here. Like, no, I'm leaving for sure somewhere. But anyway, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your line of work. So you are currently a private practice therapist?
Yes. Private practice therapist. I do all telehealth. My line of work is so fascinating and I love it. And
it's all telehealth. It's all virtual?
telehealth. Yeah, it's all virtual, which,
So is it camera?
Yeah.
Or phone? Both.
It's on my computer is how I do. And then my clients will use their phones, sometimes they'll call me from bed like, hey, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm licensed in 5 different states. So I think what's fascinating is I have Tennessee, Illinois, North Dakota, New Jersey, Arizona. And I get the most fascinating insights into people's belief, like from all over the country. And that's,
so what sorts of trends do you see?
Well, that's what I think. I mean, I actually feel like there is a little bit of an awakening. Like, I think because of like the stuff that like I'll hear from my clients, definitely I feel like, and again, it's hard to know if this is just because I want to see it or whatever, but I do feel like there's a subtle movement towards back to God with some clients. Like, I don't bring, I don't know. I don't know if you agree or not, but I feel like people are sensing something in the air, that there's a little bit more darkness, a little bit more to fear. And I feel like some of them are moving a little bit more towards the light, even if it's slow. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Just to play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
I think scared people tend to want to believe in something.
Yeah.
And that's always been something that's held me back as well. Like, I'll talk about my uncle. My uncle is someone who's very religious. And I've talked to him before, at least in the past. He was very scared to die.
Yeah.
He was very scared to
Yeah.
die. And I think people that are scared to die, they tend to lean towards religion
Yeah.
because religion says if you do this, you'll be saved and
Yeah.
you'll have an afterlife and blah, 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 blah. So, and that's kind of, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that people are leaning towards the light because like we said, I don't think religion is a bad thing overall. I just think people tend to use it as a crutch of fear, like fear of the unknown.
Sure. I'm trying to think about like that. And they might, I don't know.
But I don't think that's a bad thing if you do.
Yeah,
It's okay
even
to
if you
believe in
do.
something, especially for something that has, good values and good morals aligned with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
It's a net positive. And I mean, I think a lot of people will say too, though, that we as humans desire to have a belief greater than ourselves. And if it's not with God, it will be with an ideology or,
Right. Because then it's like, well, what is all this for?
Exactly. You will find something to bring purpose. And so, maybe it's, whatever, marching for, whatever.
BLM?
Yeah, BLM or trans, right? Whatever. People will find a way. But, so I think I think there's a lot to be afraid of, right? I mean, at least I feel like I've noticed my anxiety is like, oh. But it's funny because it's like, even though, I don't know that I'm always giving it to God, although that's what I'm theoretically supposed to do. So that I think I have a Black client that I adore that I've worked with he loves Trump. I mean, I'm seeing things from like the Black culture that like are.
There's definitely a visible shift on social media.
Yeah.
And conservatives love to share it like a Black person saying, I'm voting
I know,
Trump, man.
I know.
Like, Biden took my money away. I'm voting Trump. Like, I just watched some like gangster looking dude. Like, I think I sent it to you, Alex. I might have sent it to you. But it's like just this gangster looking dude. And he's like, man, Biden took all my money, man.
Yeah.
Trump all the way, 2024. And I'm just like.
But it is true. And I think like, with, Black people, I think they're also used to questioning what the intentions are of our government, even towards them. And I think that they're a little bit like, I like talking about the inner cities in Chicago. It's like, Chicago's been run by a Democrat mayor. This is a Democrat. Why has the city not been? So I think they're starting to see.
City's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I don't know how anyone would ever want to live near a city.
I know. No, trust me. I don't even want to go there. Yeah. So I think Black people like me with my Jewish, like when you've been when you've been mistreated, maybe you start to question. So I don't know if it's true for all Black people, but I think that I'm seeing a little bit more of that, even with my clients, with my young clients. with the transgender issue, I don't have any transgender clients now, but I will say this, and I guess I wanted to avoid going too much into this because I know that's like a whole other can of worms. And I have had years ago, before it was trendy, I have had transgender clients, and there was only a few. I had like 3 or 4 before it was a thing because I had kind of been known as the therapist. I wanted to work with transgender clients. And so
Why?
I felt
To
curious
support
and
them?
empathetic in some
Okay.
way. But this was 10 years ago. It was before it was a thing. So I just wanted to put that in perspective. It was when it was quite new. And like people were like, okay, the ones that I worked with, I can just speak to those 3 or 4. I mean, severe, victims of severe abuse, physical, sexual, severely mentally ill. Those were the ones that I had worked with. And now, and again, it's interesting to have that insight as a therapist where now it's just trendy, or I feel like I'm seeing a lot of young kids that just want like an identity that's different from being, like a straight white person or whatever it is. So that's just another interesting insight, is that I think when I had transgender clients 10 some years ago, it was different than like what we're seeing with this gender stuff now, is all I can say. I don't know.
Well, it's almost like trendy now.
It's trendy. And then it was more of a mental illness because of, and I'm not going to say they had, been victims of like severe abuse, that it's going to mess, whether it was like sexual abuse, right? And so then you no longer want to, identify with the body that you have. And so that's been interesting to see the progression of that as well. I have since labeled myself more of a Christian counselor because I recognize that I'm not in a place politically, ideologically, to give the support to like the transgender community right now that maybe they're looking for. So I at least know that I try to gently curate who I think is going to benefit most from my style of therapy. Not because I don't want to work with transgender clients, but because I don't know that I would be the most supportive or affirming. Does that make sense?
Totally. Because if someone came to me and they were like, if one of my kids came to me and they're like, dude, I think I'm a girl, I'd be like,
Yeah.
no, you're not.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I have one client, and I'm
Just
trying
a
to.
feminine.
Yeah.
Maybe you're gay.
Yeah.
Gay is whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just gay.
Yeah.
You don't need to change genders
Yeah.
to be gay. You're just
Totally.
gay.
Totally.
But you're not a girl,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that is, I take a little bit more of and I feel like therapy's kind of actually come under fire a little bit. And I would recommend to people to be cautious about, there was a book or someone on Rogan she wrote a book called Bad Therapy. And it was really about like the negative effects of therapy, like on children, and how we're over attaching to like anxiety, depression, and I agree with that. I take a more conservative approach. in my
right? Well,
therapy.
if you're doing therapy, let's say you're doing therapy 3 times a week. Well, 3 times a week, you're talking about how shitty your life is.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you want to talk about the anxiety, you have to think about the anxiety.
Yeah.
So, and I do think there's something to be said about
100%.
like, okay, let's think less.
Yeah.
Like, let's stop overthinking.
Yes.
But therapy brings those things up.
It does. And that's what she was saying can be damaging, especially for kids. 100%. And I do agree with that. I think like in my style, I try to be more like, goal-oriented, strength-based, like positive, and we'll talk about stuff, but it's like to stay there and and like the worst things that have happened to you every week for an hour like that, at some point that's not serving you.
Do you have any statistical or analytical data points in regards to an increase in therapy use?
I don't, but I feel very strongly that there is an increase in therapy. I mean, it's just, I think with the marketing from like BetterHelp and Talkspace and like during COVID, I mean, all I can tell you is like, I'm not at a loss for getting clients. I mean, it's trendy. Everyone should have a therapist. Yes, but like use it with caution.
I think people just need mentors. I don't
Yeah.
think,
Totally.
I'm not saying I'm against therapy. I do think, if you think you need therapy, go get therapy, try it out. But I think a strong mentor
Yeah.
would greatly benefit a ton of people.
Yeah.
And I'm a tough love type of guy.
Yeah, you'd be
like
great.
if you fall down, scrape your knee, get back up.
Like rub some dirt in it.
Rub some dirt on it. Yeah, I'm gonna rub your dirt on it type, like, especially like my kids. Like there was a huge accident. Not huge. Stevie ran into little Luke and just freaking plowed him, dude. Just like, and Stevie's big. Stevie's a big 3-year-old, and Luke's still just one. Just plows him over, face plant to the ground with Luke, and then Stevie sort of fell on his head, and so there's a bloody lip and everything. And I was just, instead of like, holding him, like, it's okay, it's okay. I was just like, come on, dude, you're good, come on. And I was kind of like standing there with him, and I want him to realize you're fine. Like, that's kind of my approach, and I think it's obviously a very watered down approach of what I'm saying, but I think that would be kind of how I would view therapy coming from me. Like, hey, you have all the tools,
100%.
you have the power, you have the emotions. Oh, I'd like to think I am sort of a therapist. So for something about training, people love to tell me their problems.
Oh, I bet.
Especially when I was like really big on I hate personal training, but I'll do it for certain people every now and then. Personal training is just like mid-workout. People will be like, yeah, so I'm pretty depressed. I'm just like,
well, I could totally see that. I feel like that and like hairstylists, they hear a lot. There's certain
you're
professions.
one-on-one, you're having conversation, you get to know someone, and they become your friend. And once you're a friend, you start sharing stuff, probably too much stuff a lot of the time. But
my chiropractor, he knows a lot about me.
Yeah. And even who do you go to, by the way?
Oh, his name is Cliff, Active Family Chiro in Algonquin. He's the best and completely agrees with us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know a lot of chiropractors.
Do you? Okay.
But yeah, like even like kids. I've had 2 kids, and this was, I think one was kind of as COVID was starting, and the other one was during COVID, but they told me they wanted to commit suicide.
Oh,
I've had 2 kids tell me that.
Yeah,
and as sad as that is, I'm glad that they reached out to me because I want to be a source for them.
Yeah.
So, I'm definitely a little bit of a therapist.
Yeah,
I'm a big brother. That's how I love to view it.
That's the most impactful thing, and I can't sit here and tell you like my clinical experience is subpar. Like I'm not. But I get people. I like people and then like the biggest trend I notice is people are just lonely. They're lonely. Like my brother always loves to say that we're facing a loneliness epidemic. People work alone at home, virtually a lot, So really what you're doing, I mean, it's not a lot of smoke and I think anyone could kind of do what I do. It's just like, you just listen.
Yeah, you just got the license for it.
Yeah, I have the license for it and I get to bill insurance companies, which is fun.
Yeah.
But, it's just about like, it's just human connection. It's human connection. It's seeing somebody bearing witness to their story. But I try to not, it is a powerful position. And that's why I would say to anyone, it's just like more like, you don't be cautious of who you let into your thoughts and into your brain. Because if it's not the right, I've heard stories of like, people that they can sway, especially kids, one way or the other, or adults about their marriage.
Yeah.
Or anything. I mean, you're letting someone into your thoughts. Can be good, but yeah.
Yeah. So how would you recommend making the switch that you did in a gentle, let's say, breathable manner? Because I don't think this is something that happens overnight.
Yeah, you're right. It was a very slow progression. I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to genuinely to listen to a commentator on the other side or read a book from somebody on the other side. Because if you can at least do that and still walk away feeling like, no, didn't agree, great. At least you tried to expose yourself to a different viewpoint. It's like when you only, like I've had clients where I'm like, will you read Thomas Sowell? And I will not read Thomas Sowell because I'm like, but he's a black man who wrote this book. Like you, and will not. Well, then you've just closed yourself off to any other opinion. So that was the one thing I was willing to go there. You have to be willing to understand. And I will say, sometimes I feel like I need to check myself, even falling down the conservative rabbit hole, because I was so easily entrenched in one ideology. I have to check myself to not just completely be entrenched in a different ideology. I now know that happens. So I try to check myself. But I would say...
Well, that's why I hate the two-party system.
Yeah.
I do not like the two-party system.
Yeah, you're right.
I identify libertarian, I would say.
Yeah,
if I had to pick where I'm at politically, it's libertarian. If I had to pick.
No, I like that.
So... And it kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about, right? Like the right gets associated with this and the left gets associated with that. Just like I could say I'm guilty of it because I said any liberal is going to say a child can get a mastectomy. But that's not true. Not every liberal is going to say
true.
that.
Yeah.
And the definition of a liberal is different for everyone too. It's very
That's
sort
true.
of gray.
Yeah.
Like conservative, I think, is gray. I
Yeah.
think liberal is a little gray because I have people that identify as liberal, or friends that identify as liberal, but they certainly won't have a child go get a double mastectomy.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't really necessarily know exactly where I was going with that.
Well, no, it's funny because it's like I went from, I think, I never voted for Biden, but whatever those elections were, I think I voted for like Joe George. I voted for a libertarian. There was like this weird progression for me. It was like not Biden, but it was like, and then, like the fact, like it blows my family's mind. Even they're always like, because I was like the biggest, like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the word? I don't even know what I want to say. Just like a foot soldier. And like for them to see me now, they're just like, oh my God, Nicole, but like at least I was willing to change and learn and grow. But yeah. So it is interesting. But just be open to learn.
Was it tough for you to tell everyone that you used to be a hardcore lefty?
I don't mind telling everyone that. It's tough for me to tell. I wasn't planning on telling everyone I'm voting for Trump. Like that's almost harder, but I will absolutely be, because given the two options, I mean, maybe, RFK is great, but I don't know. I was kind of between him or Trump. Will not be voting for Biden, obviously, if he is even going to be the nominee come that time. So I would say it's almost like the Trump
I think they're going to
stuff.
throw Michelle Obama in.
Oh God, please. Oh.
I'm still calling it. I've said it.
Yeah.
I probably said it like a year or two ago. I think I told you when I said it. Pretty sure they're going to.
That would be the move.
That would be the move.
Wouldn't that be the move? I just don't see Gavin Newsom changing anyone who's in the middle's perspective.
No.
Do you think? I mean, Michelle might. It would have to be something
and he
like
ran
her.
that state into the ground.
Yeah.
Had the highest restrictions, highest mandates.
I know. I know.
Ran that state into the ground.
I know. Yeah.
So the homeless problem, there's too much wrong with his own state for him to be thrown in and run a country. And everyone, there's not a chance anyone on the right would ever consider a Gavin Newsom.
No. So yeah, I just don't know what they're going to do. Maybe it'll be Michelle. I hope not.
Yeah.
It's like anything short of Michelle or like Oprah Winfrey, I don't see the left like doing well. Or just lots of mail-in ballots. That might help them.
Yeah.
With no IDs.
Yeah.
No voter
No
IDs.
IDs. No, yeah.
And just mail them all in.
Yeah, you don't need an ID. Just vote. Just send us a sheet of paper.
IDs are racist.
What'd you say?
IDs are racist.
Yes. Yes, voter ID is racist. Except for when you buy guns, alcohol, and anything else in this world.
Or drive a car.
Or drive a car.
Can't. I know.
So, is there any like one piece of, I guess you started talking about it. Share your favorite book that helped, we'll say, red pill you.
I am going to probably go with the Thomas Sowell book. I mean, it's Black rednecks and white liberals, which is like the most random of names. Thomas Sowell, I believe, I mean, I know he's an African-American, I don't know if he's a professor, he's an economist. And I think what my brother told me was that he had set out to prove trends of racial, like, disparity or systemic racism. And I think his information disproved it. And so he's just such an intellect. And
so he was kind of lefty.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the story. Don't quote me on it. But his book is just sheer history and sheer facts.
Sounds right. I can't remember. Okay. But he's a very smart man.
Very smart. And like his book, it's facts. It's just facts that you didn't think about. So I would say that one. The other thing is maybe listen to a Candace Owens. I mean, her books are great. She wants to help the Black community.
I love her docuseries stuff that she's been doing.
Oh yeah, like Shot in the Dark.
Shot in the Dark's great.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother topic. But love that. Love her her boldness and bravery with speaking truth. You know, yeah.
One of my favorite Candace Owens moments is when she went to the Black Lives Matter mansion.
Yes!
Did you see this?
Oh, yeah, I did. And
they put together
She's super pregnant.
Yeah, she's pregnant. And she shows up. She's like, "Hi, is this the Black Lives Matter residence?" She's like speaking on the intercom. And there's a simultaneous video of the Black Lives Matter
Latrice
president.
or Patrice something.
Something,
Yes.
yeah. She's like, Candace Owens is here.
Threatening me.
Threatening me.
She's
Yeah, she's crying.
crying.
She's crying. Threatening me, and like they're demanding that I come outside. And she made a video of the side by
I
side where
know.
Candace Owens like sitting there pregnant. Like, so are
It's
you gonna come
so
outside
funny.
or can I come in?
So funny. And she also says too, I remember Candace goes, all I see is a white security guard and a white dog. And it's just like, again, the Black Lives Matter president who takes all this money and lives in a gated community in a wealthy white neighborhood. That is the hypocrisy and like the BS. It's like, what about giving it back to the community? And
Not an ounce went back to the George Floyd community.
Not an ounce. So yeah. Candace is great, and I would recommend that. I've grown to love Tucker. Used to hate him. Had a visceral response to him. I don't know why. So many things. I'm like, it's almost like, why? It's almost like it was like implanted in my head to just, you should hate these people.
Well, it's hard to ignore when you leave Fox News and you become like the second biggest
I know.
listener.
Yeah.
The
Is
second.
he that big? Yeah.
I
didn't
think
know.
so.
I'm in the Tucker
I think
network.
it's Rogan and then Tucker,
Tucker, yeah.
with listeners.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong. I don't know. Alex, any input?
Not positive, but I
Okay.
mean, he gets hundreds of millions of views. Which
Well,
is
I know
like-
it was something ridiculous. In like 10 minutes with the Putin interview, he had like 1 million downloads within like 10 minutes or
Yeah.
something
Oh, wow.
crazy.
Yeah. That actually kind of was, that Putin interview was a little like, meh. I thought it was going to be better than it was.
Yeah,
A
I
little
thought it was
boring.
too, but Putin's a little boring.
Yeah, he's boring. I was like, oh, that's boring. I think like I would say too, I just have to like throw this out there. My biggest takeaway from all of this COVID stuff and just everything over the past 5 years is like my number one quality that I admire in people is like bravery. It's like courage and bravery to just go speak out against the grain. And honestly, as much as I love Candace, I don't really always agree with everything she says. But I can feel intuitively she's speaking truth and she's not bullshitting and she's not in anyone's pocket. You know what I mean? And so I would say the same thing with Tucker, same thing with Elon Musk, same thing with Joe Rogan. It's like when you see somebody that's speaking truth, even if you don't agree with everything, there is something so refreshing and nourishing about that that I think we just don't get, that people are so desperate for. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you like...
No, I totally agree with you. And it kind of goes back to that X factor with you because you were brave
yeah.
enough in that moment to be like, you know what, this Indian, like,
Yeah.
let's ask the Native
Yeah.
Americans like what they're saying,
Yeah.
even though your friends are like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
Which it is stupid.
I know.
Like we lost the Redskins
I know. No, I hear you.
because, and there was a, to kind of go back to that point really quick, some sort of Indian federation wrote to the Washington Commanders and says, we want our mascot
I
back.
did
you
hear
know
that. I did hear
That didn't
something
make
like
any
that.
news.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because by saying everything was racist, all representation is
Yeah,
gone.
you're right. Yeah, and that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
You're right.
But-
it's interesting.
Anyway, thank you so
Yeah,
much
this was
for
fun.
emailing us and coming on because I think so many people, if they watch this, they can relate to a lot of like
good. I
the
hope
biases and propaganda that fooled you into thinking a certain way, and now your eyes have opened and you're
Yeah,
completely different person.
yeah. A lot of propaganda to sift through. And yes. Yeah, no, I'm glad you had me. Oh, wait, I thought of one last final thing to end this on.
Okay.
I remember when this will be like just, when Trump would say fake news, fake news, fake news. And I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, what is he talking about? Like, that's how entrenched I was. Now I see everything. Now I get it. Like, right? Like everything's fake news. Like, it's like once you see that things are contrived and again, propagandized, you can't unsee it. So that's like the biggest thing I would say that I've learned. And now I'm just going to figure things out one issue at a time with my eyes wide open. So
Totally agree.
Thank you.
I want to take this second to say too, that if anyone is in this similar situation, if anyone out there wants to share their story and wants to say how they did and maybe someone did a 180 from Republican to Democrat, you are more than welcome to come on this show and we will learn from you and we will hear your experience. I want people to be able to share it and all sides, every side of the coin. Come on. Thank you so much again, Nicole. It's awesome meeting you.
Yeah,
Random
thank
stranger
you.
just coming to the podcast.
That's fun.
But
Super fun. Thanks so much.
yeah, good luck with everything. And if anyone wants to find you, do you have like a social media? Do you have anything like that?
It's hidden, but I can leave you like maybe an email or something.
Okay.
Or
Maybe we can put it in the description
figure
so if
something
someone
out.
wants to, yeah. But anyways,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
been
Awesome.
awesome.
So fun. Thank you so much. Yay, that was fun.